Hi guys, welcome to this second episode, or second lesson I should say. Today we're looking at Flexboxes. We're not trying to cover every single option with Flexboxes. We're just trying to cover some of the more simple options that might be applicable to you when you're doing your web page. And we shall go through creating a simple Flexbox. I'll talk about what we're going to do in just a moment. So let's bring up the manual here. So in the README, it says blah, 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 blah. You can read that for yourself. So we'll be looking firstly at the Flex manual. We're going to have a look at the Flex manual, and then we're going to do a practical exercise. We'll create a small Flex box that should end up looking something like this. So the Flex manual you will find here. I've already opened it. I need to preview it, and I'll close that. Right, so the Flex manual uh, is basically a visual manual of all of the different items for Flexbox. There's a lot of them, and you probably won't use a lot of them. You can look at this in text sort of version, W3 Schools, but this is sort of a nice visual version of it. So, um, yeah, we can see here that you've got row, column, reverse. None of those I use very much. I use justify content all the time. And basically with combined with justify content, I tend to use, what do I tend to use? I tend to use space between and space around the most. Although center is also very useful. So keep your eyes open for those. Align item, sometimes use it. Center, I guess you sometimes use that. These two you don't use very much. Flex properties, I tend not to use grow or shrink or wrap, but you can. If you learn them, you can. This is a really interesting one, perfect centering. So it turns out in HTML and CSS that it's easy to horizontally center something with simple CSS commands. However, it's not so easy to perfectly center something within a div, both horizontally and vertically. A flexbox is probably the best way to do it. Something like this: display flex, justify content center, and align item center, and that's all you really need to do. It will center it perfectly. So remember that trick when you're trying to put something in the middle of a div. Okay, it's got other stuff here. You can it's got navigation bar as an example, which is what we're doing. Look, you can read all of this for yourself. I think the best way to learn this is actually to play around with it. So let us set up our own little Flexbox here. So I might close this manual. And I've actually got a seed file for you. So if you go into the repository, you'll find a file called l2simple.html. And all I've done is I've just set up a few words which need to go in, and I've set up an internal styling. So remember, you need to do yours as external for when you're submitting this, but for experimenting and learning, this is a really easy way of doing it. So probably a better way of doing it. Okay, so let's start. So we basically want to, let's go back to, we want to create this, right? So we've got dogs, cats, birds, and snakes. Okay, so we've got dogs, cats, birds, and snakes. So these things here are all going to go in a group. Now, when we look at a text, when we look at a flex box, it's basically looking at all the divs within the flex box. And so these things need to be wrapped in a span, in this case, span, because they're going across horizontally. They all need to be wrapped in a span so that they'll work properly. So we could type that all in manually. I could, for example, go double click, Alt W, span, give it a class and everything else. But there's a nicer way. Visual Studio Code lets us edit multiple lines in one hit. If I put my cursor on dogs there and I press Alt Control, sorry Mac people, you'll have to look up what that is, and down arrow, you can see my cursor's doubled up in size. Now it's tripled, it's quadrupled. So I've got a cursor now that if I type on a line, I'm affecting multiple lines at the one time. Now, the best way to do this is if you press Shift and then press your End key. Now you're going to have to go and look for your End key because a lot of laptops we'll combine that with another key. Go find your end key. You might have to press a function key or something. Really useful to get working, because when you do, you can select that those strings, even though they're different lines, different lengths, sorry. And then you can just do our Alt W trick, and we can type in span class equals, and we'll call this menu item. Okay, so they're all of class menu item. So done. Really quick sort of trick there. And this thing here, which isn't in this list, we will call W div, and we'll call this menu header, I think. Class equals menu header. Okay, fair enough. So now when we're defining a a Flexbox, we need to have items that'll go in the Flexbox, and we need to wrap those items in a container. So I'm going to go Alt W, and I'm going to go div class equals menu item container. You can call it anything, of course. It's just something that's easy to track. All right, and now we can go and style that. And so if I go dot menu item container and display flex and put preview on, you can see it's come across there. So if we turn that off, or we get rid of that, all right, then they're just working as a normal span. But when we turn display flex semicolon, and then we can do our justify content, which, if you can't remember, I think the flex manual had it. I've turned the flex manual off, it seems. So this is the justify content option we're looking at now, and we're going to use probably space between, I think. Yeah, I think space between. All right, so we need our preview back on. Justify content. I'm using tab wherever possible to not type things, because it's more accurate than typing. And you can see there, it's done its job. All right, so if we look back at our tight on space here. Okay, so on our preview, we can see this was supposed to be in red, so we might give it a bit of a red background just to be consistent. Where's our preview? Okay, that's looking not too bad, although you can see here we didn't use space around, we used, we must use space around there, I think. Oh. Flex menu, space between. Okay, so let's use space between. Okay, so, oh, we had it before. Sorry. Okay, that's what it's supposed to be. Sorry about that. All right, so that one's done. We could, we could probably, well, that's pretty good actually. I think that's pretty much right. Let's get pets done now. So pets is menu header. So let's set up a menu header. And for this, we're going to put a height 50 px. And just so that we can see what we're doing, we might put in a background color of beige. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so we can see now that pets is in the top left-hand corner. And if you remember, well, let's have a look at our picture first. You can see we want to center that, and we also want to make it an H2 maybe. Maybe we could make that an H2. Okay, so that's bigger. And we wanted to center it. And if you remember in our Flex manual, I was saying there's a nice way of doing that. This one here, perfectly centered content, justify content center, align item center. So we just need to make it a flex box. So if we were to take this one, this one here, and we can go display flex, turn my display flex, and justify, nope, in the wrong spot. Apologize for that. Justify hyphen content center. And I think it was align items center. It centers it perfectly. And there you go. We've pretty much reproduced this bit here. So that's really the end of the lesson. Go and practice that because you need a Flexbox in your assessment task. And I'll see you in the next lesson.